For decades, we were told the problem was calories. Eat less, move more, try harder. But what if the real issue was never willpower and always biology? What if the true driver behind weight gain, fatigue, brain fog, and chronic disease is a single hormone silently running the show? Insulin? Insulin is not evil. It is essential for life. It allows your cells to take in glucose and store energy. But in today's world of constant snacking, refined carbohydrates, sugary drinks, and ultra-processed food, insulin is elevated almost all the time. And when insulin stays high, your body is locked in storage mode. Research in metabolic physiology shows that insulin is the primary hormone that signals fat storage. When insulin rises, fat burning shuts off, not slows down, shuts off. Your body cannot efficiently burn stored fat while insulin is elevated. That means you can cut calories, you can exercise for hours, you can push through hunger, but if insulin remains high, your body resists releasing fat. This is not a theory. Studies measuring respiratory exchange ratios confirm that high insulin levels suppress lipolysis, the process of breaking down fat. In simple terms, high insulin traps fat inside fat cells. Now consider this shocking reality. The average adult in modern society eats 5 to 7 times per day. Every snack, every sweetened coffee, every bite of bread spikes insulin. Even foods marketed as healthy whole grains significantly raise blood glucose, which triggers insulin release. Over time, cells become less responsive to insulin's signal. This is insulin resistance. The pancreas responds by producing even more insulin. Blood tests may show normal glucose for years while insulin levels are silently climbing. Long before type 2 diabetes is diagnosed, hyperinsulinemia is already damaging blood vessels, increasing inflammation, and promoting fat storage. Research published in major endocrinology journals has demonstrated that elevated fasting insulin predicts weight gain and metabolic disease years before blood sugar rises. Insulin resistance is not just about diabetes. It is associated with heart disease, Alzheimer's disease, sometimes called type 3 diabetes, polycystic ovary syndrome, fatty liver disease, and even certain cancers. Insulin is a growth hormone. Chronically high levels stimulate cellular proliferation. That is not controversial. That is biochemistry. So when we talk about a ketogenic diet, we are not talking about a fad. We are talking about a metabolic intervention designed to lower insulin. When carbohydrate intake drops significantly, blood glucose stabilizes. With less glucose entering the bloodstream, insulin secretion decreases. As insulin falls, the metabolic switch flips. The body transitions from glucose-burning mode to fat-burning mode. The liver begins converting fatty acids into ketones, beta-hydroxybutyrate, acetoacetate, acetone. These ketones are not emergency fuels. They are efficient, clean-burning energy molecules that power the brain and muscles. Clinical research has shown that nutritional ketosis reduces circulating insulin levels and increases fat oxidation. In controlled feeding trials, low-carbohydrate diets consistently lower insulin more effectively than low-fat diets, even when calories are matched. That means it is not simply about eating fewer calories. It is about changing the hormonal environment. Imagine your body as a hybrid car. When insulin is high, you are stuck in electric mode with a drained battery, constantly refilling it with sugar. When insulin drops, the engine switches to gasoline, your stored fat. Suddenly, you have access to tens of thousands of calories already on your body. Hunger stabilizes, energy becomes steady, cravings quiet down. This is not magic. It is metabolic flexibility. One of the most powerful findings in obesity research is that people with higher baseline insulin levels lose less weight on conventional calorie-restricted diets. The body fights to maintain fat stores when insulin is elevated. But when insulin drops through carbohydrate restriction, fat becomes accessible fuel. Studies using metabolic ward settings, where every bite of food is controlled, demonstrate that carbohydrate restriction leads to rapid reductions in insulin and increases in fat breakdown within days. And the benefits extend beyond the scale. Lower insulin levels reduce sodium retention, which explains the rapid drop in water weight during early keto adaptation. Lower insulin reduces inflammatory markers such as C-reactive protein. Lower insulin improves triglyceride levels and raises HDL cholesterol in many individuals. Lower insulin improves markers of fatty liver disease, a condition affecting an estimated 1 in 4 adults globally. Perhaps most compelling is the neurological impact. The brain consumes roughly 20% of the body's energy. Ketones provide a stable fuel source that does not depend on constant glucose spikes. Research in neurology has shown that ketogenic diets reduce seizure frequency in drug-resistant epilepsy. Emerging studies suggest potential benefits in cognitive decline and neurodegenerative disorders. When insulin is chronically high, glucose transport into brain cells can become impaired. Ketones bypass that bottleneck. They provide an alternative fuel. This is not speculation. This is documented physiology. Critics often argue that carbohydrates are necessary for energy, but the body has no essential requirement for dietary carbohydrates. It has essential requirements for amino acids and fatty acids, but not carbohydrates. The liver can produce the small amount of glucose required through gluconeogenesis. Meanwhile, reducing carbohydrate intake lowers insulin, and lowering insulin unlocks stored energy. Think about that. You are not broken. Your metabolism is responding exactly as designed to the signals it receives. High insulin tells your body to store. Low insulin tells your body to burn. A ketogenic diet is simply a tool to lower that signal. And when that signal changes, everything changes. Blood sugar stabilizes, hunger hormones like ghrelin decrease, satiety hormones such as peptide YY increase, energy levels smooth out, afternoon crashes fade, the cycle of cravings weakens, the constant mental battle around food quiets. This is why keto feels different from other diets. It is not about white-knuckling through deprivation. It is about shifting hormones so the biology works with you instead of against you. Of course, not every person responds identically. Genetics, sleep, stress, medications, and overall health status all play a role. But the foundational principle remains consistent across decades of metabolic research. Insulin is the master regulator of fat storage. Lower the hormone, and you change the game. In a world where metabolic disease is rising at an alarming rate, where obesity, type 2 diabetes, and fatty liver disease are now common even in children, the conversation must shift from calories alone to hormones. The ketogenic diet is not a cure-all. It is a strategy, a scientifically grounded strategy aimed at lowering insulin and restoring metabolic flexibility. The real revelation is this: your body already knows how to burn fat. It does it every night while you sleep. The problem is not capability. The problem is constant insulin stimulation blocking access to that stored fuel. When you reduce carbohydrates enough to lower insulin, you remove the barrier. You allow physiology to do what it was built to do. And that is the deeper message. Keto works because it changes the hormonal signal. It lowers insulin. And when insulin falls, the door to stored energy opens. The question is no longer whether you can lose weight. The question becomes whether you are willing to change the signal your body has been hearing for years. For years, we were told food is just fuel. Calories in, calories out. But what if food is not just fuel? What if it is information? What if every bite you take is sending instructions to your genes, your hormones, your immune system, either pushing you toward healing or quietly accelerating disease? Science now confirms what ancient cultures understood instinctively. Real, whole foods do not merely sustain life, they regulate it at the cellular level. Inside every cell of your body are tiny energy factories called mitochondria. They determine how energetic you feel, how clearly you think, and how slowly you age. Research in cellular biology shows that nutrient-dense whole foods improve mitochondrial efficiency, while ultra-processed foods increase oxidative stress and mitochondrial dysfunction. And mitochondrial dysfunction is now linked to obesity, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, cardiovascular disease, and even cancer. That is not dramatic language. That is peer-reviewed literature. When you eat a grass-fed steak, you are not just consuming protein. You are delivering bioavailable iron that carries oxygen through your bloodstream, vitamin B12 that protects your nervous system, zinc that regulates immune function, and complete amino acids that repair muscle and enzymes. Studies comparing grass-fed to grain-fed beef show higher levels of omega-3 fatty acids and conjugated linoleic acid, compounds associated with reduced inflammation and improved body composition. Inflammation is not just a buzzword. Chronic low-grade inflammation is a driving force behind nearly every modern disease. Now think about wild-caught salmon. Its deep pink color signals astaxanthin, a potent antioxidant. Its omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA, have been shown in thousands of studies to reduce triglycerides, support brain health, and lower inflammatory markers. The modern diet is overloaded with omega-6 fats from industrial seed oils, creating an inflammatory imbalance. When you eat fatty fish, you correct that imbalance at the membrane level of your cells. Cell membranes are built from fats. The type of fat you eat literally becomes part of your cellular structure. That means your dietary choices influence how flexible, stable, and functional your cells are. Consider eggs, one of the most unfairly criticized foods in history. For decades, cholesterol in eggs was blamed for heart disease. Yet modern meta-analyses show no significant association between moderate egg consumption and cardiovascular risk in healthy individuals. Eggs contain choline, a nutrient essential for brain development, liver function, and neurotransmitter production. Nearly 90% of people do not meet recommended choline intake. Deficiency is linked to fatty liver disease and cognitive decline. When you eat eggs, you are feeding your brain chemistry. Leafy greens like spinach and kale may look simple, but they are biochemical powerhouses. They deliver magnesium, a mineral involved in more than 300 enzymatic reactions in the body. Magnesium deficiency is associated with insulin resistance, muscle cramps, poor sleep, and increased stress response. Research suggests a large percentage of adults consume inadequate magnesium, largely due to soil depletion and processed food consumption. When you saute greens in olive oil, you are not just making a side dish. You are activating fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K for better absorption. Extra virgin olive oil contains polyphenols that act as antioxidants and anti-inflammatory agents. Studies from Mediterranean populations consistently associate olive oil consumption with reduced cardiovascular mortality. These compounds protect LDL particles from oxidation, a key step in plaque formation. Now contrast this with ultra-processed food. Highly refined carbohydrates spike blood sugar rapidly. Repeated spikes increase insulin demand. Excess sugar undergoes glycation, a process where sugar molecules bind to proteins and fats, forming advanced glycation end products, AGEs, that accelerate aging and damaged tissues. AGEs contribute to stiff arteries, wrinkled skin, kidney damage, and neurodegeneration. This is not cosmetic. This is cellular destruction driven by dietary patterns. Processed seed oils exposed to high heat generate oxidized lipids. These unstable molecules increase oxidative stress and promote inflammation at the cellular level. Research links excessive intake of ultra-processed foods to higher rates of obesity, depression, cardiovascular disease, and all-cause mortality. One large observational study found that for every 10% increase in ultra-processed food intake, the risk of death increased significantly. That is staggering. Food is not neutral. It either contributes to resilience or vulnerability. Avocados provide monounsaturated fats that improve lipid profiles and enhance satiety hormones. Nuts and seeds offer fiber that feeds beneficial gut bacteria. And your gut microbiome is not a minor player. It influences immunity, metabolism, mood, and even behavior. Scientists now call the gut the second brain because it produces neurotransmitters like serotonin. Diets rich in whole foods increase microbial diversity, which is associated with better metabolic health and reduced inflammation. Ultra-processed diets reduce diversity, weakening this internal ecosystem. When your microbiome suffers, your immune system suffers. When your immune system suffers, chronic disease risk rises. Real food also stabilizes blood sugar in ways that transform daily life. When meals are built from protein, healthy fats, and fibrous vegetables, digestion slows. Glucose enters the bloodstream gradually. Insulin response remains controlled. Energy remains steady. The afternoon crash disappears. Cravings diminish. hormones rebalance. Leptin and ghrelin, hunger-regulating hormones, function more predictably when blood sugar swings are minimized. This is not about discipline. It is about physiology. Perhaps most profound is the effect on gene expression. Nutrigenomics, a growing field of research, demonstrates that nutrients can turn genes on or off. Polyphenols in vegetables and olive oil influence pathways related to inflammation and detoxification. Omega-3 fats regulate genes involved in lipid metabolism. Antioxidants activate NRF2 pathways that enhance the body's own defense systems. In simple terms, whole foods send healing signals to your DNA. Processed foods send stress signals, and over years, those signals accumulate. Fatty liver disease now affects children. Type 2 diabetes is rising in adolescence. Cognitive decline is appearing earlier. These trends parallel the rise in ultra-processed food consumption worldwide. Meanwhile, populations that maintain traditional whole food diets consistently show lower rates of chronic disease. This is not coincidence. It is cause and effect playing out over decades. The transformation begins at the cellular level long before symptoms appear. You may not feel inflammation building. You may not notice insulin climbing. But inside, cells respond to every nutrient or lack of nutrient you provide. The empowering truth is that change can also begin at the cellular level. Within weeks of improving diet quality, inflammatory markers can decrease, liver fat can decline, insulin sensitivity can improve, mitochondrial function can rebound. The body is remarkably resilient when given the right raw materials. Food is not just about taste or tradition. It is the language your body understands. Whole foods speak in the dialect of repair, stability, and resilience. Processed foods speak in the dialect of chaos, spikes, and oxidative stress. Every meal is a vote, not just for the number on the scale, but for how your cells age, how your brain performs, and how your heart functions decades from now. The science is no longer emerging, it is established. Real, nutrient-dense foods influence inflammation, hormone regulation, mitochondrial health, gut diversity, and gene expression. That is not hype. That is biology. And the most powerful part is this: you participate in that biology 3 times a day. You are not powerless in the face of chronic disease statistics. You hold biochemical influence in your hands at every meal. The choice is not between restriction and indulgence. The choice is between cellular stress and cellular support. When you choose whole foods, you are not simply eating differently. You are communicating differently with your body. And over time, your body listens. For years, people have blamed themselves for their cravings. They called it weakness. They called it lack of discipline. They believed hunger was a character flaw. But what if cravings are not a failure of willpower? What if they are a predictable biological response to unstable blood sugar and hormonal chaos? Every time you eat a meal dominated by refined carbohydrates, your blood glucose rises rapidly. In response, your pancreas releases insulin to clear that glucose from the bloodstream. When the spike is sharp, the insulin response is often equally aggressive. Blood sugar then drops quickly, sometimes below baseline, triggering fatigue, irritability, brain fog, and renewed hunger. This is not psychological, it is biochemical. Continuous glucose monitoring studies show that rapid glucose spikes are often followed by rapid crashes, and those crashes strongly correlate with increased hunger and calorie intake at the next meal. In other words, the roller coaster drives the cravings. Now imagine a different physiological scenario. You eat a meal centered on quality protein and healthy fat. Protein stimulates the release of satiety hormones such as peptide YY and GLP-1. These hormones send a clear message to the brain: you are nourished. Fat slows gastric emptying, meaning food leaves the stomach more gradually. This slows glucose absorption, preventing sharp spikes. Blood sugar rises modestly, insulin responds proportionally, and energy remains stable. Stable glucose means stable mood. Stable mood means fewer impulsive food decisions. This is not theory. Clinical research comparing high-protein meals to high-carbohydrate meals consistently demonstrates greater satiety and reduced subsequent calorie intake with higher protein intake. Protein also has the highest thermic effect of food, meaning the body burns more calories digesting protein than it does digesting fats or carbohydrates. Up to 20–30% of protein calories may be used during digestion and metabolism. That is metabolic advantage built into physiology. Beyond satiety, protein preserves lean muscle mass. Muscle is metabolically active tissue. The more muscle you maintain, the more glucose your body can dispose of efficiently. Studies in aging populations show that higher protein intake protects against sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle mass that contributes to frailty and metabolic slowdown. When muscle declines, insulin resistance worsens. Preserving muscle is not cosmetic, it is metabolic insurance. Now consider dietary fat. For decades, fat was blamed for obesity and heart disease. Yet the rise in obesity paralleled the rise in low-fat, high-carbohydrate dietary guidelines. Large-scale reviews have found no consistent evidence that total saturated fat intake directly correlates with increased cardiovascular mortality in the context of whole food diets. Meanwhile, replacing fat with refined carbohydrates has been shown to worsen triglycerides and reduce HDL cholesterol. Fat is energy-dense, yes, but it is also hormonally stabilizing. Fat does not trigger a significant insulin response. When combined with protein, it creates a meal that sustains energy for hours. This is why a breakfast of eggs and avocado can carry someone through the morning, while a bowl of cereal often leads to hunger before noon. The cereal spikes glucose. The eggs stabilize it. One drives cravings. The other quiets them. Hunger itself is regulated by complex hormonal interplay. Ghrelin rises before meals and falls after eating. Leptin signals long-term energy sufficiency. Chronically high insulin and frequent glucose spikes interfere with leptin signaling, contributing to leptin resistance. When leptin resistance develops, the brain struggles to recognize stored body fat as available energy. The result is persistent hunger despite adequate or excessive fat stores. Studies in obesity research confirm that improving insulin sensitivity can improve leptin responsiveness, and improving insulin sensitivity often begins with reducing refined carbohydrate intake and emphasizing protein and fat. There is also the neurological dimension. Dopamine, the brain's reward neurotransmitter, responds strongly to sugar and highly processed carbohydrates. Repeated exposure can dysregulate reward pathways, increasing cravings and reducing satisfaction from less stimulating foods. However, stabilizing blood sugar reduces these dramatic dopamine swings. Over time, taste receptors adapt. Natural foods become more satisfying. The intensity of cravings diminishes. This process is not instant, but research on dietary interventions shows that reducing sugar intake can significantly decrease cravings within weeks. Now look at energy stability. The human brain consumes approximately 20% of the body's energy at rest. It demands consistency. Glucose volatility affects cognitive performance, attention, and mood. Studies demonstrate that high glycemic variability is associated with fatigue and impaired concentration. Conversely, meals higher in protein and fat produce more sustained cognitive performance across several hours. When blood sugar remains steady, the brain does not signal emergency hunger. Mental clarity improves, emotional regulation improves, decisions improve. That stability changes behavior in subtle but powerful ways. The phrase fat plus protein equals control is not motivational rhetoric. It is metabolic strategy. When digestion slows and insulin remains moderate, lipolysis, the breakdown of stored fat, continues between meals. The body transitions more easily into fat oxidation. Instead of being trapped in constant sugar dependence, metabolism becomes flexible. Metabolic flexibility is the ability to switch between fuel sources efficiently. Modern dietary patterns, dominated by frequent high carbohydrate intake, reduce this flexibility. Studies measuring metabolic markers show that individuals adapted to lower carbohydrate, higher fat diets increase fat oxidation rates significantly. They access stored energy more readily. That access reduces urgency around food. It reduces panic hunger. It reduces the biological pressure that makes overeating feel inevitable. And when biology stabilizes, psychology follows. Consider the emotional toll of constant hunger, irritability between meals, energy crashes mid-afternoon, late night cravings that feel unstoppable. Many people interpret these experiences as personal failure. In reality, they are predictable consequences of unstable glucose and hormonal signaling. By restructuring meals around adequate protein and healthy fats, you remove the volatility. You remove the rapid spike and crash cycle. You give your hormones space to function as designed. Even sleep improves. Blood sugar instability during the day can contribute to nighttime awakenings due to stress hormone activation when glucose drops too low. Stable daytime nutrition supports stable nighttime physiology, and sleep itself regulates appetite hormones. Poor sleep increases ghrelin and decreases leptin, driving hunger the following day. It is all connected. Stable meals support stable sleep. Stable sleep supports stable appetite. This is systems biology in action. Critics often argue that calorie balance ultimately determines weight. That is true in principle, but hormones determine how difficult that balance feels to maintain. When hunger is relentless, adherence collapses. When hunger is controlled, balance becomes sustainable. Research consistently shows that higher protein diets improve adherence precisely because they reduce hunger and spontaneous calorie intake. People naturally eat less without deliberate restriction. The body cooperates instead of rebels. This is the quiet power of combining fat and protein. It shifts the internal environment from chaos to consistency, from spikes to steadiness, from compulsion to control. It is not about eliminating joy from food. It is about removing the biochemical triggers that hijack appetite. When blood sugar stabilizes, the noise fades, cravings soften, energy evens out. And for the first time, many people experience what true satiety feels like. Not stuffed, not deprived, but genuinely nourished. That feeling is not rare. It is physiological. And it begins with understanding that hunger is not a moral weakness. It is a hormonal signal. Change the signal and you change the experience. Fat plus protein is not just a macronutrient combination. It is a strategy for restoring metabolic stability in a world engineered for glucose volatility. And when stability returns, so does control, not forced control fueled by willpower, but biological control rooted in balance.